It's brilliant. Brilliant, layered, wonderful, complex. She's an amazing writer. We're looking forward to hearing her.
I have read the book. I read it months and months ago, and I can't quite remember it. I'll get refreshed today.
I think it's a wonderful program. Other places get in touch with the library to see if they can develop a program like Deschutes County has done. I think it's good.
I thought it was an absolutely inspirational book. Loved every bit of it. It was delicious. I've never lived in a community like this before that had this kind of a community-wide book club and all the associated activities such as the quilt display and the origami classes. And I think it makes Bend a very, very special place to live.
Deschutes County, highest users of digital books in the state, and we keep adding. It's now, if it was a library branch, it would be our second busiest branch in the county.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. My name is Michelle Fuji. I'm joined with Toru Watanabe. The two of us are co-directors of a new Taiko company in Portland called UNIT SOUZOU. And SOUZOU in Japanese can be translated into three ways. One, imagination. Two, creation. And third, my favorite, and also exclamation mark at the end, it can also be translated as noisy. So we really want to create a lot of noise in this world, and we want to, and stress the idea of having a lot of creative and imaginative experiences that we actually compose for the art form of Taiko. The first piece that we played for you is called Futari, and that just simply means two people. You saw the two of us straddling this one drum. And in this next piece, we're actually going to bring it into telling a story. This piece is very dear to both both of us. It's called Zutto Futaride. Directly translated, that means together forever. And it's very sweet and sentimental in that way. But Toru and I are also partners in life. We're married. We've been married for about 12 years. And working together and also being partners, we've discovered a lot through these many years together. So when I translate it into English, I sometimes say, it's really that we're stuck together. And with that, it has both of those essences of us really feeling that we're building our life. This is actually part of a longer work that we're developing right now. In October, we're going to be debuting a full-length theater work called Zutto Futaride. If you happen to be in Portland, please check us out. So you can hopefully tell the little tale in this next 5 minutes.
Thank you.
「 Thank you. This is a short and sweet performance that we brought to all of you. We're going to end with one more piece. And I forgot to say, Taiko is the Japanese word for drum. So as you can see, we brought several drums that we are using in our expression. But if you actually see us sometimes in our larger ensemble, you'll see even larger drums. It's about the diameter of me. That is a very, very large drum. So we actually consider these our medium-sized drums in comparison to what our large drums really are. We hope that you may stay in touch with us. We are, again, UNIT SOUZOU, and that's spelled SOUZOU. And the last piece that we're going to play for you today just has a little bit of pep and energy in hopes that we brighten your day. It's called Korekara. Korekara means from now on. And we wrote this piece because we have this hope that as we honor our past and as we celebrate our connection with all of you today, we hope that from now on we may stay connected. So with that spirit, please enjoy Korekara, our last piece.
UNIT SOUZOU. Welcome everybody to our 12th annual A Novel Idea. As you can see, we've changed things up a bit this year. We're going to start off, I'm going to do about 30 minutes of stand-up comedy, and then we'll have our author out. So I want to talk to you a bit about a novel idea. It's about our community. So I have a lot of people to thank, and it's because it took so many people to make this happen. This month we've read together, we've discussed together, we've folded origami together, drummed together, we've rolled sushi, eaten sushi, written poetry, discovered tsunamis, understood or tried to Schrodinger's cat in quantum mechanics. We learned more about Buddhism together, and most importantly, we drank sake together. A Novel Idea provides space each year for our communities in Deschutes County to come together to experience the breadth and depth of one book. I want to extend my appreciation to the oil painters, watercolorists, photographers, printmakers, poets, and quilters who created beautiful works of art in celebration of a tale for a time being. Thank you. Every one of our Novel Idea programs are free and open to the people of Deschutes County. Our Library Foundation makes this possible by raising every dollar needed to pay for programs and author visits. The foundation also raises money to support our library's early learning initiatives for babies and young children, the summer reading programs, which are free to all ages, and they support our materials collection, so you have more books and music and movies to check out both online and at the libraries. So thank you, Library Foundation. Today we have a special request. We are trying to take these poor little envelopes and make them a little happier. Consider making a $10 donation. We're trying to raise $10,000 in the next 10 weeks to raise money for the next Novel Idea program. Donation envelopes are in your programs and are also available at the foundation table in the lobby. So please consider making a gift to our foundation. There are also many people to thank each year who enrich the Novel Ideas programs and events. It takes a village to create a month's worth of engaging programs, and we are grateful to Wabi Sabi for their donation of time and materials for our origami classes, to Teresa Bowerman for donating her time and expertise and supplies for our sushi classes, and to Susie at Newport Market for the generous donations of sake and for the sake tastings. Thank you all. We also wish to thank our many partners, Atelier 6000, COCC, Sun River Books and Music, Paulina Springs Books, Barnes & Noble, Lewis and Clark College, the University of Oregon, McMiniman's Old St. Francis School, the Ben Karate Club, Portland State University, and a local university, OSU Cascades. Thank you all. We also have several generous and loyal sponsors who've been supporting A Novel Idea for the past 12 years. Without their support, we would not exist. These sponsors are the Starview Foundation, the Echo Fund, Ben Research, the E.H. and M.E. Bowerman Advised Fund of the Oregon Community Foundation, the Roundhouse Foundation, On Point Community Credit Union, and all of the Friends of the Library organizations across Deschutes County. Thank you all for your support. We also receive generous grants from the Oregon Arts Commission, the Deschutes Cultural Coalition, and Deschutes County. The library's in-kind sponsors for media and outreach are the Ben Bulletin and the Oregon Humanities. We appreciate your immense support for all of our generous sponsors and programs. Please thank all of them for helping us out. And a very special group of people that have helped us out, and that's all of you. Your individual contributions have made this event possible throughout the years. You'll also see our list of all of our generous donors at the back of your programs tonight. So thank you all. We are very fortunate to have the Library Foundation Board who dedicates time, money, and energy to tonight's event. And we'd also like to thank our newest board members, Kristen Kovalik and Brock Stenman. Thank you, Foundation Board, for all that you do. And one last round of thanks. We have special AmeriCorps volunteers who have been helping out with tonight's event. So thank you, AmeriCorps, for helping us out. Please welcome Adam Davis to the stage. Thank you. And now I invite Kim Jackson, our Vice President of our foundation, to introduce tonight's speaker.
Thank you.
Wow. I think there are people out there. Though why would they be here on a beautiful day like today?
Maybe to hear the drumming.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. You know, I think I made a mistake. That's what I want to be doing.
I do, as we're about to jump in, I do want to just say a big thanks to Todd and Kim and Chantal and everyone that worked so hard on this, and a huge thank you really to Michelle and Toda for one more time for the performance that you did. So we're going to talk for a bit, and then we'll open to questions that will be from 2 microphones in the aisles, and we'll let you know when that's happening. The way I wanted to start, the first question was really inspired by the drumming, and that's one way to communicate with the world. It's sort of a confident way to get out there, make a lot of noise, and be heard. And as I was thinking about A Tale for the Time Being, and now, it starts off as one voice sending really a kind of precarious word out into the world. Yeah. And I was wondering both about now, how she did that, and also about how you see that related to what you're doing. That is, you write and put it out in the world. And so I just want to start by asking about how that feels to you now to, on your own, put some words out there and then see what happens.
It's an interesting question. You know, now is 16 years old, right? And I remember being 16 years old, even though it was a very, very, very long time ago. And when I was Nao's age, I wanted to be a writer. You know, it was very clear to me that that's what I wanted to do. And at the time, of course, you know, I had the kind of sort of confidence that Nao has, you know, that she doesn't expect to have a big audience, but she knows that there will be somebody out there, one person out there in the world who will, you know, who will find her words, you know, and pick them up and read them. And that's really enough for her. Right, and when I was 16, I think that was, you know, I didn't have a whole, that was kind of the extent of my, you know, of my ambition as well, and it never really, and I think that while I'm writing, you know, I am always writing for, you know, I'm writing for an audience of one. I'm writing for myself. Right? In the sense that, you know, when I'm writing a book, I don't really think about readers, even though, you know, and I'm writing because, you know, the writing is a way of sort of thinking about the world and experiencing the world and asking questions. And then, but I also know that later on, you know, with luck, the book will go out into the world and readers will find it and they'll pick it up. And that's when things get interesting. And this really reminds me of the drums too, because the drums are like a conversation. It's a conversation between the drummers, but it's also a conversation between the drummers and the audience. And that's very much what I think, you know, a novel is too. It's a collaboration. It's a conversation between the writer and readers, and it's a very beautiful thing in that sense.
So you talked about when you were 16, having one reader in mind, and that reader was chiefly you.
Yeah.
And you've had success, big success with your books and with your films, and those
I've
are
been lucky.
two areas where you're putting word out into the world, and the world is listening and responding. Just listening to Todd describe the different activities and the community formed really around some words that you put on a page. And I want to ask how that has that changed how you think about sitting down to write?
When I'm actually writing, I'm still it's still an inquiry. It's not yet a performance. It's an inquiry. It's a way of thinking about the world. And I think that the reason that I write is because I have questions about things. The world is a perplexing place, don't you find? And so these questions arise, and if I give myself the task of writing a book about these questions, then I'll actually pay attention and continue to, search out answers. If I don't give myself that task, I'll be checking my email and watching Game of Thrones instead. So it's hard to know which is, that's fun too, right?
Fun, yes, in a way, yes. What was your question that led you to this book? It sounds like it was a question.
Yeah. Well, this book, it's very interesting now because we're all digital now, and it used to be that when you started writing a book by hand, you could kind of lie to yourself and say, oh yeah, I started that book like a year ago or 2 years ago, when in fact it was like 10 years ago or something. Now everything, when you start typing, it's got a date stamp on it, so you can't lie to yourself. And I started writing this book in 2006. I know this, December of 2006. And, but when I think back on the process now, I realize that actually I started writing this book back in 1997 or 1998, because there are things in this book that, that really, and inquiries, questions in this book that really date back that far. And to be more specific about it, the book is really, it's a book about time, and it's a book about impermanence, and it's a book about interconnectedness, and it's a book about impermanence, right? And so in 1997, this was the first time that I really encountered, I had a close encounter with dying, right? My father was very ill at that time, and he died in 1998. So suddenly I had this kind of realization that we end. And at that same time, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so once again, this was a process of I took care of her, and so for 6 years or something, I was watching more than that actually, because she died in 2004. But I was slowly watching this time being coming to the end of her time. She was a time being with a time limit, and it was interesting too, because of course she was traveling backwards in time, right? She'd forget recent memories, and she would remember, things that happened, 80 years ago with enormous clarity and vividness. And so, that was interesting too, because of, her perception of time was very, very malleable, very fluid, very liquid, And so all of these things, I think, sort of added to my contemplation of time, including, of course, we had a turn of the millennium there. That's a big deal. How many of us get to live through the turn of a millennium? We're lucky, right? It's pretty cool. So that was interesting to me. We hit, 2001. You're too young, but when I was, 2001, it was a big movie back then, We didn't think that we'd ever make it to 2001, and yet we did, And so then, all of these different kind of aspects of time, and what is time, and how do we sit with this? How do we understand this? These were the kinds of questions I think that really went into A Tale for the Time Being.
You came to this book by thinking about time and thinking about really your parents both dying and getting sick and dying, and it's interesting then to think, why then a 16-year-old girl? Why seeing your parents as they aged In other words, how did now
Yeah.
come into being
Yeah, yeah.
with these questions?
Yeah. Well, once again, I think it's hard to know exactly where characters come from, but I do think that to some extent characters are facets of the writer's self, the writer's being, I mean, because where else could they come from, right? Somehow the character has to come from some aspect of one's own experience. And certainly, as I said, I can think back to being 16 and wanting to be a writer. I was a very dramatic 16-year-old. It should not come as a surprise to any of you. And I think that now was really she was very informed by the 16-year-old that I was. Although it's interesting because I wasn't aware of this while I was writing the book. In fact, I think it took an audience member, asking me, is there any, is now a part of you? And then suddenly it hit me, oh my God, maybe she is. But at the time too, I should also say that I was, I was kind of I was dramatic. I was a dramatic 16-year-old because I wanted to be a writer. And women writers back then, the women writers I was reading, Sylvia Plath, Virginia Woolf, these women committed suicide, right? And so this was something that was in the back of my head, that women writers commit suicide, right? It sounds kind of funny, but it really was, at 16 you don't have a whole lot of, you don't have a lot of context for these things, excuse me, and I was struggling with depression. I was struggling with depression during my teen years, and so I think that some of Nao's her problems, I think, are similar to perhaps problems that, and her thoughts are similar to the kinds of problems and thoughts I might have had at that age. And the other thing that Nao and I probably have in common is that we saved our lives by writing. And I do think that in a way, Nao has, taken it upon herself to write to do one last redemptive act, which is to write the fascinating life story of old Jiko. And, and in a way, as this book was sort of emerging, it occurred to me that as long as Nao could continue to keep on writing, then she would be okay. And I think that's, sort of like a Scheherazade story, that as long as the story could continue, right, as long as she could continue to write, then she would be okay. And I think that's very much the way that I experienced my teenage years as well. I think I literally kind of wrote my way through them,
And these teenage years for now are remarkably difficult.
Yeah.
When I read through the book the first time, I sort of was aware this is a really tough and I think especially isolating and isolated experience. And yet, even as I listen to you talk now, there feels like a kind of lightness, both about now and about the tone of the whole book. And so I just want to ask about how those two things go together for you, the sense of, we could enumerate the difficult, terrible things that Nao goes through, and that her family before her goes through. And yet, tonally, it doesn't feel heavy.
It's interesting. I think that in all three of my books, there's a kind of tonal balance there. There's, on one hand, sort of there's tragedy, and on the other hand, there's comedy. I remember Jane Smiley, let's see if I can get this right, in a review for the Chicago Tribune, called My Year of Meats a comical, farcical, tragical, satirical, something novel, right? And I thought that was actually very accurate, And so this idea of a kind of a leavening, a balance there is something that I think I strive for, and certainly, I'm a great lover of Shakespeare, and so Shakespeare's use of clowns, for example, Shakespeare really understood the importance of comedy, bringing comedy into a tragedy, and the idea of sort of using those countervailing forces, to balance each other, and as old Jiko would say, comedy, tragedy, same thing. You know, I do think that's true. I think that, you know, comedy is the flip side of tragedy and tragedy is the flip side of comedy. So, you know, to be able to sort of modulate back and forth between those tones, I think, you know, to me I mean, that's kind of what I want to achieve, if I can. And I guess it's also just the way I experience the world. You know, back when I was 16, I would not have been able to do that. You know, everybody would have been, you know, it would have been just pure tragedy. You know? Right? No, nothing funny at all about it. Yeah.
It's part of what I wondered about with now. I mean, her father, the difficulties with her father, her difficulties moving. Essentially, she strikes me as almost friendless, aside from her grandmother.
Her great-grandmother,
who becomes a friend in a way that she did not have a friend. She felt to me to be homeless in some way. And in a way, I wondered even about the Ruth in the book, and that seemed to be one place where there was a little bit of question about where are either of these characters at home?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that you know, that is certainly one of the questions that you know, that goes through the book, and I think that you know, it's not just a question of geographical home either. It's a question of almost a existential home or a spiritual home or you know, this kind of larger question. And so I think, you know, really, even if, you know, even if we're in a situation where, you know, we feel like we have a home, we're not running all over the place, or we're not moving, you know, back and forth, you know, from country to country, like I am. You know, this is a question that all of us have to confront. You know, where are we truly at home? Where do we, you know, where can we be, you know, comfortable, deeply comfortable with ourselves? And in that sense, you know, we all are a little bit homeless. I think that there's, you know, we live in a culture that is constantly striving to make us feel a little bit uneasy about who we are and where we are, you know, and you know, advertising, you know, billions of dollars are spent in advertising budgets to make us feel just that, you know, a little bit off balance, a little bit not settled, a little bit like, if only I had this, then I would really be happy, you know. So these are the kinds of things that I think everyone can kind of relate to, that sense of being slightly off balance and always, you know, looking outside ourselves for our home, you know, for our sense of rootedness and completion.
So can I just ask you then that question? Now, not Ruth in here, but Ruth up here. Home.
I'm a lot smarter than Ruth in the book, by the way. We're not actually the same.
I mean, just even, I know that it was difficult for you to get here geographically.
Yes, it was.
And you're on, you said for 2.5 years, essentially, you've been traveling. And so I want to ask you, so where do you find home?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I do. I split my time between British Columbia and New York. I still do have an apartment in New York. This is one of the ways in which I am a lot smarter than her. I did not give up my New York apartment. But I do spend a lot of time traveling. And you know, I think that for me, you know, one of the reasons or one of the wonderful things about my Zen practice and about, you know, meditation in particular is that it really is about, you know, sort of being at home wherever you are. And so, you know, wherever I am, you know, you know, in the Denver airport for 6 hours, or yesterday, or, you know, or here, or anywhere, wherever I'm traveling, you know, the mindfulness practice, the meditation practice, you know, does help, I think, give a person a sense of, you know, stability and rootedness and, you know, and, yeah, just kind of stability. I think that's a good word to describe it. So it doesn't, you know, I mean, of course, you know, I have some places where, you know, I like to be better than others. Bend is excellent, by the way. Really amazing place. But, you know, the idea that you can kind of bring your home with you, you know, wherever you go is kind of nice.
Yeah, and maybe we can go back in a little bit to the Zen practice.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to go a little, if this feels like a problem, let me know. I want to go further into your home for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Which feels like, in a way,
come on in.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the funny thing about this is we haven't met until this afternoon, and yet I feel like I know you.
Yeah.
This, and I even feel like I know your husband.
Yes, you do. You do. My husband's great. Yeah, so as you all know, right? Yeah.
So I mean, I know Oliver a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you about the way this ends, that exchange about happiness.
Okay,
And
right.
maybe we should go, maybe it's good to go right to it.
It's a good thing we have the book.
It is. So Oliver, who's not in fact my friend, but feels like my friend, even though I haven't met him, and I kind of want to ask you about that too. How does it feel that people feel like they know you?
Yeah.
So Oliver reached, well, would you read this?
Where is
he
it?
reached on page 401.
He reached across the counter and took her wrist. I was just kidding, he said. And then he held on a little longer so she couldn't pull away. Are you happy? He asked. Here, in this world? Surprised, she stood there and thought about his question. Yes, I suppose I am, at least for now. The answer seemed to satisfy him. He gave her wrist a squeeze and then let go. Okay, he said, returning to his New Yorker. That's good enough. Yeah. I'd forgotten about that. It's been a long time since I've read that, I
haven't forgotten about it, in part because I suppose I am happy, at least for now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty good. You know, I think that is actually, am I wrong about this? I think this is pretty good, right? I mean, you know, I think one of the, okay, put it this way. If you're feeling happy and you realize that you're feeling happy, and you take out the, you know, for now, you know, you're just, yes, I am happy. And you start to kind of you're like, okay, I'm happy now, and I want to be happy forever, right? What have you done? You've just blown it, right? You're no longer happy because you're thinking about the forever, right? You've already created a situation that's unsustainable. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, it seems like happy for now is pretty good, right? And then maybe tomorrow I'll be happy too. But, you know, and sometimes, but it also kind of takes into account that maybe I won't be. You know, that's pretty normal. You know, that's normal to go back and forth. Yeah. I mean, I think this is the other thing about, you know, the culture that we live in now, you know, we place so much importance on being happy. And that's great. You know, happiness is so wonderful, you know. And we all want to feel it so much of the time. We want to feel it all the time, right? But what it does is it makes us somehow believe that if we're feeling unhappy, there's something wrong with us. And I don't believe that. I think that, you know, happiness is part of our emotional repertoire. Sadness is also part of our emotional repertoire. And both are going to, we know perfectly well that both are going to be, you know, we're going to be feeling, you know, happiness and sadness and everything in between. So, you know, once again, just to kind of let go of that need to, you know, to always be happy and just acknowledge that when we're sad, you know, and that's perfectly normal too. I see this a lot with kids. I see this a lot with you know, especially high school and college kids. You know, where they, you know, it's normal to be depressed and anxious in high school and college. You know, I think that's pretty, right? How could you be anything but, you know? And yet, because our culture places so much importance on happiness, these kids feel like there's something wrong with them for just simply being teenagers and having hormones and all of those other things that I vaguely remember.
I think this is good. This is seeding the question session well. I see some good reactions from some folks that are closer to that age, close to the stage. I do want to ask about the scene in the book with the biggest group of kids, and it's the young girls, the Yankee girls.
Oh, the Yankee girls,
the Yankee girls, and with Chico, who we haven't really talked about. Yeah. But it's a scary scene at first. Yeah. And then there's the bow that she gives to this group of threatening girls. Yeah. And then when Now asks her about it, she seems to get wrong who the girls are. Yeah. I guess I wonder what the getting wrong matters, if it matters, and how it is what that bow means for you.
Well, you know, actually, I have no idea, because when Chico bowed, it blew my mind. I couldn't believe that she was doing that. I was as scared as you were. Seriously, I mean, you know, but she had this way of turning things around, you know. And was she kidding when she said she didn't, you know, was she telling the truth when she said she didn't know who these girls were, or that they were even girls, you know? I don't know. But she did have this way of, you know, of constantly you know, sort of turning the tables on my expectations anyway. And it's always wonderful when a character starts behaving like that, because you know, then you realize that, I mean, you're just not kind of in control. The character is behaving, and you're, you know, running around frantically trying to keep up, and you know, so that was a good moment. I remember that. Yeah. I do. I was very happy when she did that.
I hope you told her.
I did. I was always grateful to Jipo, because she would always do things. You know, I know this sounds a little nuts. You know, I do understand that I'm sounding like a mad person now, but it is, you know, looking back on the experience, that is how it felt to me. You know, and that's how it feels when the writing is going well. It feels as though the characters have an agency of their own, and they are just sort of behaving in the ways that they behave, and that I'm, you know, just there trying to keep up with them, and you know, just trying not to interfere too much, because whenever I interfere, then things go downhill really quickly. So, you know, this idea that just, you know, sort of staying open to it and allowing the characters to, you know, sort of move along the trajectories that they move on, that seems to be the best way to handle it. The characters who I have to, you know, in the past I've had real ego clashes with some of my characters. I remember with Oliver Creation, my second book, it was kind of a book about power, right, and about omniscience. And I thought that I should be the omniscient narrator of that book, right? There should be an omniscient narrator, and that would be, of course, me. And but one of the characters in the book, Yumi, who, coincidentally or not, is most like me, she decided that no, she wanted to be the narrator of the book. And so we kind of went head to head on that one for a while. But then I realized, no, you know, of course, if a character is asking, you know, if a character is demanding something like that, then you kind of have to, you know, you have to really take it seriously and not try and not interfere too much. And so I gave her the damn book. Go for it. Have the thing.
To some extent, even in this book, I feel like there's, and really in My Year of Meats too, there's who's this book going to be most about?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it Jane?
Yeah.
And then in this one, I felt like that question too, and it's brought up by what you've just said about giving it over to the characters. Yeah. And so you come to the end of this book and can't help but wonder, where is now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess I wonder, once you felt like you put the book to bed as a book, you still wonder about now?
You know, I don't really wonder about the specifics of her, you know, of her existence. You know, I feel that she expressed herself fully in the book. It's true that the question is never answered. You know, what happened to the, you know, one of the main protagonist of the book. It's true, that question was never answered. However, the way I thought about this was, you know, the book starts with now essentially writing a letter, or you know, a diary in this case, but writing to someone, right, and casting her words out into the world, certain that, you know, that the person that she is addressing will, you know, sort of come into being, that she will, through her words, call a reader into being, right? And we've seen that happen, because she in fact does that. She casts her words out into the world, and, you know, a reader materializes in order to kind of catch them, right? And the book ends with Ruth doing the exact same thing. Ruth is, you know, casting her words out into the world and calling on now. And we've already seen what happens in that case. You know, that the act of, you know, addressing somebody will, you know, call the reader into existence, into being. So my feeling is that, you know, you know, the book has a pretty happy ending. You know, and it's similar to what happens with all of us, isn't it? I mean, with readers and writers. You know, I don't know who my readers are going to be, but, you know, I now, and it circles back to your first question, you know, that I do feel that, you know, if you take it upon yourself to write a book or, you know, something like this, and you do cast it out into the world, and somebody picks it up, then, you know, suddenly you are in this very intimate conversation, right? And that the writer and the reader, in a sense, kind of are collaborators, right? And co-creating this story. Right? Because, you know, I can sit there all I want in my little cabin in, you know, Desolation Sound writing away, you know, but until you pick up the book and you meet it, you know, and you invest those words, just black marks on a page, you invest them with your own lived experience, right? Then that's when the book comes to life. And what's freaky about, you know, about language and stories like this is that, you know, this is truly, you know, a quantum multiverse, right? Because there are so many different versions of A Tale for the Time Being out there in the world now, right? There are many worlds that have the name A Tale for the Time Being, based on, you know, on the many readers, right? And I think that kind of blows my mind.
I guess I want to ask about, just thinking now about writing as a sort of casting out into the world and bringing something into being.
Yeah.
And so writing is a kind of productive activity.
Yeah.
And I want to ask about Zen and how, in a way, they seem like very different activities.
Yeah.
You have writing, which is the making of something, putting it out in the world for other people to engage with or not, and filmmaking to some degree too. But you are also a Buddhist priest, and so I want to ask how those sit together for you, if they sit together.
Yeah, oh no, they sit together very well. They you know, so much so that, you know, I mean, obviously there are differences between writing and, you know, meditation, between my work as an author and my work as a priest. But essentially, I do see them as being very similar. And certainly the Zen meditation kind of creates the ground, the foundation on which everything else rests, right? You know, just on a practical level, you know, meditation is a wonderful thing to do, because it does give you a kind of stability and, you know, a sense of, I mean, you know, it improves, you know, your focus and your concentration, and all of these things are really good for writers, you know. It also, I think it's a very liberating thing to do. It sort of, you know, if you do develop a kind of a, you know, a meditation practice, you find things that used to be barriers or walls kind of melting away in funny kinds of ways. And so that's, you know, great when you want to, you know, when you're writing, because that's exactly the kind of thing that you need to be doing. But the other thing I think that, you know, that meditation does is, and I would say this is true for writing as well, that it's a practice. In other words, it's something that you do over and over and over again, right? And, you know, without really any kind of expectation for any kind of outcome, right? It's just something that you do. And through the doing of it, of course, it does have effects. And one of the effects it has is developing a sense of confidence and a sense of faith, right? I would even call it faith, that, you know, that through this, you know, that when you, you know, return to the cushion or return to the page over and over and over again, then worlds will open up. Right, and I definitely think that's the case. You know, that's the case with writing. You know, that without that kind of daily or weekly or whatever you can, you know, that kind of returning, right? Then books won't get written. I mean, I know this is true because it took me a really long time to write this book, and I almost gave up on, you know, so many different occasions. So anyway, so that's one way that the two are, I think, very complementary. But the other thing too is that even though we think of writers and we think of, you know, Zen monks, for example, as being very solitary, you know, very solitary, these are very solitary things to do, meditation and writing. Actually, it's not the case. You know, that both of these practices are practices in connection, in making connection with others. And that's certainly true for, you know, for the Zen practice that I do. You know, yes, I do spend a lot of time meditating alone, but I also spend a lot of time meditating in groups and, you know, really being in community with people. And so it's that meeting and that understanding that we are not alone, you know, that we cannot exist without others, right? And that's at the heart of both writing and Zen.
I guess I recently was fortunate enough to happen into an act of public meditation, which you were at the head of in Portland.
Portland, yeah.
where it was a theater of, probably more people than here, which is no slight to Bend. It was a big room. And you had us all meditate towards the end, and I wondered if that was something that would be of interest here.
Would you guys like that? Excellent. Okay. So, is this okay with everybody? I'm going to assume that that we're going to that we can do this. Okay. We won't take long. It won't take long, and it's not. It won't be painful. I promise. Let me just say this before we start, too. Okay. First of all, whatever happens, if you have to clear your throat or cough or sneeze or sniffle, anything like that, it's fine. Okay? It's absolutely fine. Is there anybody in here who's never coughed or sniffled before? If so, raise your hand. Okay, good. So your neighbor will forgive you because your neighbor understands that this is part of having a human body, okay? And so what I'd like to do is just propose that, well, let's see. First of all, could we bring up the lights just a tad, just so that I can kind of see a little bit? Yeah. Oh, not too much, down. Oh, I see, okay. Okay, we'll just leave it. That's good, that's fine, we'll leave it off, okay. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to ask you to do is to, if you're holding anything in your hands, to put it down, okay? Just put down anything you happen to be holding in your hands. And then when you've done that, I'd like to ask you to sit up straight. And you might need to move forward on the chair a little bit so you're not leaning back. Okay, you want to try if you can. And if this is uncomfortable, then don't do it. Relax and lean back. But if you can, sort of sit upright and support yourself. Good. And then you can place your hands on your knees, palms down, because that gives you some kind of support. And you can put your feet, of course mine don't reach, but you can put your feet flat on the floor so that you really have a nice grounded sense. Your 2 feet on the floor and your body sort of centered and upright in the seat. Okay? And then I think let's close our eyes. Okay, so let's close our eyes. And with your eyes closed, just take a moment to kind of rock very gently forward and backwards and side to side, just to get a sense of your body in space, sort of sitting upright in your chair. And then when you find a center point, a point of balance, you can just stop. Okay? And then we'll just do a little brief body scan, starting with the top of your head. Just bring your awareness very gently to the top of your head. Just see if there's any sensation there, anything you can feel. And then just allow your awareness to drop down into your forehead, into your brow. If there's any tension there, just see if you can breathe into that and relax it and let it go. We carry a lot of tension in our foreheads and temples, so just really relax that, let it go. And then allow your awareness to continue to drop down through your face, back of your head, your jaw. Take a moment here, too, to notice if you're clenching your jaw at all. Again, the jaw is a place where we have a lot of tension. Just let it go, relax it. And then just continuing down through the neck, into your shoulders, just relaxing all the muscles in your shoulders. And then letting your awareness drop down through your arms, your elbows, your forearms, all the way down to your fingertips. Just noticing too the feeling of warmth in your palms, where your palms are making contact with your knees. And then coming back up into your chest, into your ribs. And here, just let's take a moment and take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and feel how that feels. See if you can feel the sensation of the cloth, perhaps, of your clothing shifting against your skin. Let's try it again. Take another deep breath. And then breathe out. And then continuing down, letting your attention, your awareness drop into your stomach. Again, once again, we hold so much tension, I think, in our stomach. So really take a moment here to relax. Just let your muscles go. Really radically relax your stomach muscles. See how that feels. And then continuing down, letting your awareness move into your hips, into your buttocks, down your thighs. And take a moment too to feel sense the pressure of the chair against your legs. Just see what that feels like. Notice what that feels like. And then continuing down, take a moment to notice the pressure of your palms against the tops of your thighs. See if there's any warmth there. And continuing down through your knees, your shins, your calves, your ankles, all the way down into your feet. And here too, take a moment to notice the pressure of the ground against the soles of your feet. All of the places where we're making contact with the ground, with the earth. Just notice those. And then just allow your awareness to travel back up and really fill your body. And checking in all the places where perhaps you were holding tension that you noticed earlier, and just checking in, and if you find any tension there or your muscles are clenched at all, just once again, just really, you can breathe into it. You can use your breath to find those places, take a deep breath, and allow your breath to help you relax. Just very, very gentle, very relaxed feeling. And then as you're sitting there with all of your senses open, just bring your awareness very lightly onto your breath. Okay? Just follow your breath, very light attention on the breath as it comes in and travels out. And as you're breathing, just, if thoughts arise, just notice them and let them go. So we're just going to practice sitting quietly, keeping our awareness lightly on the breath, and noticing any thoughts that arise. And if the thoughts arise, just notice them and let them go. And return your attention to the breath. Minds are meant to think, so it's not a big deal. You don't have to worry about emptying your mind. Just notice the thoughts and let them go, and return to the breath. And we'll just sit like this for another minute or so. And then just as we finish, as we bring the meditation to a close, with your eyes still closed, just take a moment and rock a little bit forward and backward, from side to side. Just bringing a little bit of movement back into your body. And then very slowly, if you'd like, you can use your hands to rub your face, but just very slowly open your eyes, little by little. Good. Good. You did beautifully. Just beautifully. That was really nice. Yeah. So how was that? Was that okay? Was that okay? Good. Don't clap for me. I didn't do anything. You guys did it. So Yeah, I'm curious, but like, how many people found that easy? Raise your hand. Okay, good. How many people found that hard? Raise your hand. Okay, good. How many people, let's see, how many people felt their minds, very quiet? Very quiet. Raise your hand. Okay. How many people felt their minds like really jumpy? Like monkey mind, we call it, monkey mind. Good. How many people, anybody get sleepy? Okay, good. Did you feel that time was moving, how many people felt that time was moving quickly? Raise your hand. How many people felt that time was moving very slowly? Okay. Here's one. How many people felt you were doing it right? How many people felt you were doing it wrong? Good. That's great. That's excellent, because all of those are exactly right. All of those answers, whatever you felt, was exactly right. And the good thing is that there's no way to do this wrong, right? There's no way to meditate wrong, right? Whatever it is that that happened to you today, whatever it is that you experienced, was your meditation today, and tomorrow it will be different. So this is a very reassuring thing. This should be very reassuring to you that there's no way to fail at this task, right? Because all you're doing is you're sitting quietly in time. You're sitting and being a time being. That's the point of this, right? And you're coming home. So there's no way to do it wrong. Oh. Yeah. Thank you all.
You were asked at the beginning of kind of where now came from, and you shared when you were 16 once, and so is now, and some things about her. Certainly your character, Ruth, has you in it.
Yeah.
What about Jiko? What
Jiko.
of you, but then you said Jiko had a mind of her own.
Yeah.
She bowed in front of the young girls. What of you is in Jiko?
Well, I think you could say that Jiko is my aspiration. I would also like to be 104 years old. And I would like to have a little of her equanimity, I hope that when I'm 104 years old, that I will have a sense of humor still. That would be really great. I suspect I'm going to have a sense of humor if I make it to 104, I think I'm going to find that very funny. So, I hope, anyway. So I would say that Jiko is kind of my aspiration for the future. And I have to say too, I have to give credit where credit is due. Jiko comes from many different places, but there certainly is a lot of my mother in Jiko. My mother was very funny, and my mother, she had Alzheimer's, and so there were all of these times where, she would, here, I'll give you an example. We would be walking someplace and we'd pass a mirror, and she'd look in the mirror and she'd say, "Who is that old woman?" Right. And of course, being her daughter, I'd be like, "Oh, she's having an Alzheimer's moment. She doesn't recognize herself." And I'd say, "Mom, that's you." And she'd look at me and she'd say, "No." And she was completely kidding. She knew perfectly well who she was, So this kind of stuff would happen a lot, And so I think certainly Jiko, that's where Jiko gets her little twists, I think. I would just kind of channel my mom.
It's the concept of multiple universes is raised, and that they can take place simultaneously, but not in conflict.
Yeah.
Where were you heading with that?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. That's a great question. This is part of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, quantum physics. And so in that sense, I didn't make that up. That was Hugh Everett. That was Hugh Everett when he was the physicist who first proposed the many worlds interpretation, and that was his speculation. I can't do the math, so I can't prove this mathematically, although he did, and that's what made it so interesting. As far as I'm concerned, you know, the appeal of that to me is very much sort of literary, okay? And you know, one of the things that I was playing with in this book is the idea that different realities can exist simultaneously. And in a way, I think by putting myself, you know, or a version of myself in the book, it was a way of sort of exploring an alternate reality. What if I had been walking on the beach and I found, you know, a Hello Kitty lunchbox with a diary inside it? You know, what if, you know, and so this question about what if is something that, I mean, that is the question that novel fiction writers ask themselves all the time. That is the basis of our practice, is asking this question, what if, da-da-da-da-da, right? And so in that sense, every time you ask that question, what if, you are kind of creating parallel universes, right? Because that question forces you to deviate every time, right, from what is actually happening, or what we think is actually happening. So, you know, in that sense, so there's a kind of, that's kind of my literary, you know, from a writer's perspective, you know, that was kind of my intention. But once again, you know, this is you know, the theory of you know, the multiverse, or.
Well, I like the way you actually used it, because I think it recurs throughout your book. Mm-hmm. You have alternate universes going on in conflict all the way through.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's right. No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because you keep asking the question, what if, what if, what if? Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just glad you gave a satisfying answer to that.
I was very taken by Now's father, actually.
Yeah.
And the whole topic of suicide.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very curious, you know, how you handled that, because I thought that it was done very well. And, you know, really, because that, you know, teenage suicide is sort of an increasing problem in our society. And
It is. It is.
Just like you to talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and you know, I've been concerned about especially the correlation between bullying and suicide amongst young people for quite a while now. I started tracking it when I was in Japan, because it's impossible to avoid in Japan. The media covers it. You know, it's written about. You see it coming up in movies and films and pop culture references, you know, to bullying and suicide. It's very much a part of the public discourse in Japan. And you know, if you look at you know, if you look at the World Health Organization, for example, the statistics that are coming out now about suicide rates around the world, you know, in the last 40 years, the suicide rates globally have increased by 60%. Okay. It's shocking, right? And the, you know, the two segments of society that, you know, that have the highest suicide rates are young people, you know, teenagers, and middle-aged men. And so, you know, this was something, and this has been very clear in Japan for a long time. People have been talking about this. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that, you know, because I've been going back and forth between Japan and America and Canada for a long time, you know, that things that are, you know, that become newsworthy in Japan, things that are talked about, things that are trending in Japan, very often will start to trend here in this country as well. Now, I first noticed this back in the 1970s with Hello Kitty, okay? And at the time, I remember looking at this ridiculous cat and thinking, there is no way that, you know, Americans are ever gonna get behind this, you know, this little feline, right? And of course, I was very wrong about that, right? So this is something that I've been doing for a long time. I've been watching the trends, you know, in Japan and seeing, you know, and sort of watching them play out globally. So when I started to become very aware, and when I was living in Japan, and you know, become aware of this, you know, sort of trending topic of bullying and suicide amongst young people in Japan, it was something that, you know, I thought, oh my God, are we going to start to see more of this in the United States? You know, and in Canada, which is where, you know, I spend part of the time now. And you know, certainly when I wrote the book in 2013, it came out, it was published, 2 young women in Canada were sexually bullied, molested. And you know, you can't call it bullying, it's rape. and the images were posted online, and they killed themselves, right? There's a, once again, in Silicon Valley, the Caltrain is a site of, I think there were 6 teen suicides because there's a high school right next to Caltrain, and I think 5 or 6 kids have killed themselves in front of the Caltrain, in the last very short while. So to my mind, we can either ignore this stuff or we can look at it. We can talk about it. And one of the things that I'm so grateful for with this book is that colleges and universities and communities like this, are reading the book, and very often, I've done some of these first-year reads programs at University of Wisconsin, for example. So, I think 6,000 incoming students, had read the book, and the university used this as an opportunity to offer, to say, depression, suicide, that these things, that you're young, and if you have these kinds of concerns, here's where you can get help. So they brought it, they used the book as a way of really bringing these kinds of services and these problems into the discourse, and so that's been I think that's been gratifying. That's been something that I didn't really expect, but it's been it's been great to see that. Pardon?
Working locally in mental health, it's nice to see the conversation come up in the artistic form. Because it just brings awareness to it, and hopefully some new dialogue.
Exactly.
It's refreshing how you did that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your question too, and thanks for the work you do.
Throughout the book, I just couldn't help but think, how was this book received in Japan? Because it's a brutal depiction of bullying and the salaryman's dilemma, and you're not Japanese. Well, you kind of are, but well, you're kind of Japanese, but just in the same way that Now was.
Well, honestly, in Japan, as I said before, these things are not. They're talked about in Japan. This is, the salaryman sitting on a park bench, not telling his wife, that he's lost his job, committing suicide. These, bullying in high schools. These are not things this is not news to the Japanese. They've been, as I said, they've been talking about it. The danger is that they would think it's cliche. Right, that this would be a kind of a cliche, so it's not that, it's like, well, we know about that, If anything, that would be, that would, sort of be the sort of logical response to it. But I don't think that's been the case either, because I do get a lot of, the book has been translated into Japanese, and I do get mail, from Japanese people, and I think they're responding to it in the same way, that they respond to it in the same way that readers, in different parts of the world, they sympathize with Now. They, they like old Jiko. I don't know what they think about Ruth and Oliver, but yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the book has been, I think, translated into 30 languages or something. So there is clearly something here that is speaking to people, and I think it's speaking to our, it's speaking to our fears and our concerns in some way. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
First of all, thanks for coming and visiting us in Bend.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me.
So I would like to know, as an artist,
Yeah.
how many times did you decide the book was done?
That's a great question. Let me tell you, okay, so I'm just going to tell you a little story here. When I first started hearing Now's voice, she kind of came to me in December of 2006. She introduced herself and said, "Hi, my name is Now, and I'm a time being," right? And so, at that point, it was very clear to me that Now would need a reader, right? She was clearly addressing somebody, right? And she didn't know who her reader was going to be. I didn't know who her reader was going to be. It was my job to figure this out. So I started kind of auditioning readers for that role. Okay, and I would think of a reader, and I'd invite the reader into the fictional world, and we'd, you know, play around for a while, and I'd be writing away, and the, you know, the book would kind of get longer, and you know, and then at some point something would happen. It just, you know, the thing would just kind of collapse, right? So I'd usher the reader out, you know, grieve for a little while, you know, and then eventually think of another reader, bring that reader in, we'd do the whole thing again. I did this 4 or 5 times, okay? And so in other words, to go back to this idea of a multiverse, you know, the many worlds, there are, in a way, 4 or 5 different A Tale for the Time beings that exist in my mind alone, okay? And so, you know, I continued to struggle with this. I mean, this took me, it took place over about 6 years or so. And finally, at the beginning of 2011, I finished a draft, you know, really finished it. It wasn't a very good draft, but it was done. And I was just about to submit it to my agent to give to my editor when the earthquake and tsunami hit Japan, right, in March 11th, 2011. And, you know, and that was a huge shock to me because, you know, I have family and friends in Tokyo and Sendai, and you know, I was worried about their, obviously first about their well-being. Got in touch with them, and you know, they were okay, and you know, but I just was, you know, watching these images, right? And somewhere during those weeks that followed, I suddenly realized, you know, that this that I had written a book that was appropriate to a world that no longer existed, right? That the world that I had, you know, that the world in which I had written my book was a pre-earthquake, pre-tsunami, pre-Fukushima world, and now we were living in, you know, a post-earthquake, you know, tsunami, post-Fukushima world. And so it was almost as though this catastrophic event had kind of caused a rift in time, right? And I realized that was it. I couldn't go forward with the book. It was no longer relevant. So I took it back, and you know, and basically, you know, kind of thought that was it. I can't go forward with this book. And that's when my husband, Oliver, thank you, Oliver, he, you know, we were discussing it, and he said, you know, he pointed out, you know, like the reality of these events, this catastrophic series of events had broken the world, you know, and it had broken my little fictional world as well. And so the only way then to proceed was to allow the fictional world to stay broken, right? And the way to do that was to enter it myself as a real person, right? In other words, to inject this kind of reality of my identity into the fictional world of the book. And that's why I decided to do that. And I thought he was absolutely right about that. And I said, you know, Ollie, you know, you're right. It's a great way, you know, a great way forward. However, you know, you do understand that if I'm in the book, then you have to be in the book too. And thankfully he agreed. He said that he thought it would be an interesting thought experiment. And so then, you know, at that point I took the manuscript and I unzipped it, I threw about 2/3 of it away, and as an artist you will understand this, right? And started rewriting it again with myself in that role. Of course, being in the role of the reader changed the story considerably, right? Because as I said before, every reader writes a different story. Right. So, you know, but it was also interesting because it took me only about 5 months at that point to finish the book. It happened very, very fast. So it was ready to happen. So, you know, books are time beings too. They take the time they take. Yeah. Sorry, long answer, but yeah.
Hello. At the same time, I was struck by the isolation that so many of your characters lived in. Now, her father, her mother, just heartbreaking that the reason he quit his job, he really couldn't put on the table.
Yeah.
And even her great uncle, the kamikaze pilot, his diary in a language that, you know, he too kind of redeemed himself through his writings.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was reading the book Unbroken. And as Louis Zapparini is in the prisoner of war camp, Japanese prisoner of war camp, it's an expectation, really, that they should want to kill themselves, that these non-Japanese prisoners, it's so shameful that they have been caught, that they should want to kill themselves. And it really made me wonder, is there just a whole different expectation, understanding, while Nao and her mother are really kind of expecting their father to commit suicide? Is there something in the Japanese culture that's really quite ingrained that is different from other cultures? Or is it really, I mean, can you just maybe address that?
I mean, you know, every culture is very, you know, obviously very different, right? And when we live in a Judeo-Christian culture that looks at suicide as a mortal sin, right? So that obviously, you know, conditions our way of thinking about suicide in a very, very deep and profound way. In Japan, you know, traditionally suicide has been a way of redeeming your honor, right? And so, you know, lovers' suicides, or, you know, I mean, there are very different, you know, many different iterations of this, you know, in Japanese culture. But it's, you know, primarily a way of redeeming honor. Now, I don't think that Nao and her mother, you know, expected this, you know, but it is certainly, you know, a huge difference, I think, the way that we, you know, sort of hold that notion in Japan and in this country. So yeah. Is that one more question? I think let's let one more. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for all three of your books.
Oh, thank you.
I'm grateful to have read them and thought about them and discussed them with others. And I wondered if you would speak to what has drawn you to write fiction and what you see as the power of fiction.
Yeah. You know, I used to be, I've always wanted to write fiction. Ever since I was a little kid, I've always wanted to be a novelist. You know, I love novels, and I've always been a huge reader of fiction. And so I think that is, you know, that is the primary reason for me when I was a kid, especially. It was an escape, but it was more than escape. It was a way of, you know, of really thinking about really important truths. Because I do think there's truth in this expression, you know, there's nothing truer than fiction. I do believe that. So, you know, I think that desire has always been there. The other thing, though, is that for a period in between, I was making documentary films, right? Now, documentary films are supposed to be true, right? They're supposed to be, you know, they're supposed to be non-fictional. But after you've been working in television, especially for a while, and especially in commercial television, which, I mean, you've read My Year of Meat, so, you know, that's what this is about. You know, you begin to understand that the way that we represent truth is very fictional. Right, and so at some point there, I just realized, you know, I can't continue to go on representing the world and claiming that it is fact when I know that I'm using all of the tools in my repertoire, rhetoric and poetry and beautiful language, to manipulate people, right? And to make people feel a certain way about things or believe, you know what I mean? That's what fiction does, right? It's about, oops, sorry. And so, and certainly that's true in television as well. I mean, music and sound effects, and you spend an awful lot of time pretending to tell the truth when in fact you're kind of not, right? So that's when I decided that I would just simply, cut to the chase and just call everything that I write fiction, right? And just acknowledge this, right? And then I can be as factual as I want. So that's why.
Prepare to go back out into the sunshine.
Yeah, right.
I do want to and we were talking about happiness earlier and how to spend the afternoon, and I just hope everybody will join me in thanking Ruth for so much to make this afternoon.